Welcome to Leadership, the secret sauce, where extraordinary coaches and leaders reveal what makes them exceptional. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. Together, let's discover our guest's secret sauce. Today's episode is brought to you by Character Matters Coaching and Consulting. At Character Matters, we believe great leadership isn't just about results. It's about who you become along the way. From career transitions to team building, we help leaders unlock clarity, build resilience, and lead authentically. Because when character grows, impact follows. Visit charactermatterscoaching.com. In today's episode, we have Mickey Connolly with us to uncover his own secret sauce and maybe even a moment that is stuck in his memory. And we're going to get into his story and the challenges and what he is seeing. I think you'll want to stick around. But let's first start. Dave, you want to introduce Mickey?
I am so excited to introduce and welcome Mickey. Before the podcast, we were reminiscing a little bit, and I remember one of the previous sessions that Mickey, myself, and some of the individuals we were talking about were in Tokyo doing a global program, and I just remember sitting there. And the amount of learning exceeded my capacity to digest it. And that's been my experience with Mickey for a number of years. I've had a chance to work together and learn from him. And also my curiosity goes up tenfold every time I get into a conversation with him because his presence just generates it. So, Mickey, I didn't bring you here just to compliment you the whole time. I want to start off with a quick question for you. On a scale from 1 to 10, what is your energy level at the present moment?
No, I'd say it's about an 8.
At an 8. How about you, Matt? Where are you?
Yeah, I would probably 8.5, 9 maybe at this present moment. Yeah.
All right, I'm coming in at a 7.5 because you guys are going to have to pick me up. So quick.
It doesn't seem like a big lift. Yeah.
What's that, Mickey?
I said it doesn't seem like a big lift.
A 0.5 for me is it could be a big lift. Right. So just a question for you, Mickey. I always like to start off with is you're on a plane, train, or automobile, and somebody next to you says hello and asks you what you do. How do you introduce yourself?
Well, I don't have a package phrase because usually it's dependent upon my experience of that person in that moment. Because I don't relate to trains, planes, or automobiles as a place to sell stuff. I actually want people to just, in those environments in particular, because I care about it for myself, I want them to have their moment the way they would love to have it. And so sometimes people ask that question like an uncomfortable way to get through the fact that you're sitting right next to them. And other times people ask it and you can tell there's actual real interest there. So the short form, people ask me what I do, is I say I work with people and organizations to harness the power of communication to get more done with less time, money, and stress. That's an example. And like I said, it's not the same thing all the time. I've had, when I can sense why they're asking, I may have, because as you know, Dave, I think that you can associate the power of communication to virtually anything human beings are doing. So who's asking may change what I say, but it's still going to be consistent with that.
Mickey, I have a question. So you're one of our few guests that have been doing the same thing for a few decades. What would you have said 35 years ago when you guys started Conversant?
Well, I know exactly what we said to ourselves.
Tell me that.
Because this is not a marketing phrase. But as Dave knows, the co-founder of Conversant is Richard Reinashek, who's now retired. And Richard's interesting background, because he was a 101st Airborne, he was a policeman, he was a detective, he was a chief of police, he was a professor at John Jay School of Criminology in New York, an exchange scholar to the United Kingdom at Bramshill Police College. He's been a lot of places in that world. And we'd done a lot of work together in police, military, other kinds of places about the power of communication to resolve things like negotiations without people dying. So he's a real person, been in real tough situations. And he got really touched by the work we've been doing together in some of these police and military environments, saying that what it was leading to was he thought it was actually healing the rift between the practical and the profound, which I thought was an incredible statement. That we were helping people get things done, but in a way that their sense of themselves was stronger. Their satisfaction with who they are and what they're producing was higher. And he said, I think in almost all organizations, there's this rift, the split between profoundly who I want myself and my life to be and what's the stuff I have to get done. So he said the reason he wanted us to come together and found the company was to heal the rift between the practical and the profound for people working in organizations.
Wow.
I dropped the mic on that one.
Yeah.
I love that. And I can picture Richard saying that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to tell him, listen to me quoting him and he'll be all proud,
So, Mickey, I do have a question, like just sort of out the gate before you even so we started this podcast so we could spend time with coaches. That's what Dave and I really love doing. And so some of that is really, we want to hear a coach's story because we do believe that every coach's story is unique in terms of when they got to this place and like, that's what I want. So you had kind of asked before we started, so when was that moment? And could you describe what we call it a secret sauce is for you?
Yeah, I could talk about the moment and how I would summarize the secret sauce. Back in the 80s, I owned 8 restaurants in Texas. And I knew that, I opened my first restaurant when I was 24, so I knew I was doing something right because it kept growing, people kept coming in and having a good time. But I would say my awareness of how come things had worked and built and was weak. I was just being myself and doing stuff. I love hospitality. I love experiences where people really relax. And I'm competent in the kitchen, but I'm great in the dining room. So I just knew I liked it. But I read an article in September of 1985. That's how big of an impact this made on me. In Vanity Fair. And it was written by a guy named Toby Wolfe. And knowing you were going to ask me this, I pulled up the passage that I pulled out of that article that I still have, 40 years later?
Plus.
And this is what I read. Thanks for that, Matt.
Just shy of plus.
Okay, all right. And this is the piece that I pulled out because I realized it just ran into myself. He said, language is our meeting place, the sea we live in. When I watched my children learning to talk, I had the sense that they were not so much learning language as being claimed by it, being taken into its arms as if it were another parent. And so it is. In the arms of language, they will join the family of man. They will learn what has gone before. They will learn what is left to be done. In language, they will learn to laugh, to grieve, to be consoled in their grief, and to console others. It is in language they will discover who they are. It is the common ground of our humanity. That hit me, Matt, so hard in that moment. There's very few things that can drive me to immediate tear. And I remember reading that and just going, I'm not a restaurant guy, I'm that guy. Yeah. And it was just extraordinary what it changed. I mean, it changed the things I wanted to go do, the things I wanted to go learn. So as Dave knows, because you've heard me say this before, what it's led to. If somebody asked me today, what's my unique contribution? It's I appreciate and share the beauty, pleasure, and redemptive power of language.
Hmm.
I don't know anybody else who would say they do exactly that, but if it's not unique, it's at least unusual in my experience.
Yeah, it's unique in words, and it's unique in the actions I experienced from you in terms of helping people look more closely at language and differentiating things and coming out with new language to see things differently. That's one of the things that's had a lot of impact on me. I still remember listening to that Conversant CD over and over again, and just like it said things in such a different way. It had me have to pause and disrupt my own thinking a little bit to think differently. When you discovered this and read this article, and then you decided to take like focus differently, where did you go with it? What did you want to do? Where did you go with that calling? I imagine.
Well, one of the first things I did is I co-founded a firm called Restaurant Resources because I decided we could be consultants in that world. And because that felt like teaching, coaching, something that was not just running a dining room. And I was really disappointed in the first year of that effort because we could go in a place and I could see they didn't know how to manage inventory, or they didn't know how to manage scheduling, or they weren't putting the right people at the front door to take care of people in the right way. And we would see the reasons why they weren't making the money they wanted to make, give them what we saw were tried and true answers to those challenges. And then I'd come back in a month or two and they wouldn't have done it. And so I was stunned by people would pay money, get useful counsel, and not implement it. What the heck?
Sounds like teenagers.
So I started asking a question to anybody that would listen, which is, who knows how do you communicate something so it produces action? And I mean, I was asking that question all over the place. And it led me to different groups of people. There are the people, the philosophical linguists who really study that area. And so there's programs I went and did, there's people I went and met. It's one of the places I discovered that almost anybody will talk to you if you want to learn from them. So that's one world. That's the philosophical underlying deep principles that most people don't want to engage in. It's the kind of stuff that you have insomnia. I could give you some of the books. It'll handle it. You'll be a paragraph in and gone. So those things were not enough. But the other group it led me to are people who do high stakes negotiations. So when you're talking about the people that are doing things like SWAT and hostage, it's all about how you affect action. So I saw assessment centers where people would try to say, well, I did the right thing, like they read the manual. They just didn't get it. Well, no, you don't get to say that and be a high stakes negotiator. So, and those things then led me to different places and experts and people to talk to and things to go study. So I'd say it just generated about the next 10 years of active engagement in who knows how language affects the way people think and act. And then the mistake that I made during that is it really took my eye off the restaurant business. And looking back on it, I had people who were serious and in that business, and people I really respect who they wanted me to give up being the CEO because they knew my attention was other places. And then in the mid and late 80s in Texas, which is where all the restaurants were, the economy just crashed. And it was a really difficult time. And coming out of that, um, I realized it was my time to go. So we sold the restaurants in May of '89. And those two guys who I still admire and are close friends today went on to stay in the restaurant business and have done incredibly well. And I pivoted. My life became about communication and negotiation and alignment, and how are people smarter together than they are separately, and how do you move people from despair to hopeful, effective action. And that's been the next few decades.
And Mickey, if someone saw you today, or if they shadowed you, or they got curious about you, what would they see? Like, where would they see that? Like.
Well, Matt, it's interesting for me. What would they notice? Because they may notice in different ways other than seeing me.
The nonverbal.
I think they would notice that I ask questions that people would love to answer. It's one of the biggest things I've learned over the years is if you want to unlock a conversation, what can you ask a person that has them be eager to get in the conversation? And so I'm a student of that. What are the questions? And another thing, Dave, that you know well, is one of my absolute fundamental as water is wet principles is wise leaders make the test for listening learning. So the test is not, can I repeat your words back to you? It's, what did you just give me that I didn't have? Whether it's an insight, information, an opportunity, that people are always out to give something. Now, the way they give it, as Dave knows, Robin Anselmi, who's the CEO of Conversant today and does a brilliant job, she says sometimes they give it to you wrapped in barbed wire and bullshit. But if you listen through the barbed wire and bullshit, there is something they're attempting to give. And they may have been frustrated in the past. They may have been. So they would see me ask questions that had people relax and want to get in the conversation. They would also see me acknowledge what I learned from them. I know they'd notice that. There's a whole lot we do, I think, that's hard for people to notice. Because one of the things that we work on deeply in our practice is simply presence. Can you be in a conversation where, for us, if you're fully present, it's awareness without prejudice. So what they would notice is quiet, curious attendance to what people had to say. And that's something people don't often notice because it's quiet.
And I imagine it may be, certainly seen this enough, a little bit shorter supply as attention spans are shorter, and less longer listening experience and practice. I've just noticed that even, even on the social media world, of just acknowledging like, hey, are our attention spans getting shorter to listen, or are we we're doing this to ourselves to not really truly listen?
Yeah, I had someone who I can't name at the moment, but who was considering a very historically successful politician, a former senator from the state in which he resided, who was doing a serious study of whether he was going to run for president. And there were considerable people who were supportive. And I was on a radio program where somebody associated with him, I'm in a television program where somebody associated with him heard something I said and asked, would I be willing to talk to him while he's trying to make this decision? I said, sure. And I was sitting in his office, so I traveled to go talk to him. And in the middle of our conversation, his executive assistant came in and said, I think you're going to want to take this call. And she handed him a note. And he said, I apologize. I do think I should take this call. I'm going to have to interrupt our conversation. So I said, fine. So he walks out. He came back in about maybe 12, 13 minutes, shaking his head. And I said, you seem unhappy with whatever happened. He said, well, I think I was probably useful for the 10 minutes, but that's as much attention span. He said, this is a senator of the United States, and they all want the soundbite. You know, my background in international relations is deep and decades long, but he wants the soundbite. And he said that we don't have thoughtful discourse and that everything people want to reduce to where's the beef and have that make a big political impact. And it's what he ultimately got to. He didn't want, I'm just not going to engage in that. I'm not going to get into the shallow nature of current politics. He said, because I just don't want to have soundbite discussions. So, you know, I think that thing's been going on for a while and we have other things that are forcing it. But Matt, you're being responsive in the way that I am, that presence is the answer to many, many things. And to be able to be here, consciously aware of who I'm with and what's important to them, and able to catch and discard my own bias and opinion. You know, we tell people if your presence is weak, you miss the signals. And if you miss the signals, you miss the moment. And for executives, that's incredibly wasteful. So for us, this is an example of healing the rift between the practical and the profound. It's profound to be able to manage ourselves to be fully available in a moment, distracted by nothing, and fully given to the human beings that we're with. That's profound. But it's practical too, because you don't miss the moment, you don't miss the signals, you learn things that make you smarter than you were when you got in the conversation, and the choices you make are more well-informed and more likely to be smartly executed.
It reminds me why coaching may always be necessary is because the truly good coaches are the really good listeners. And if that gets in shorter and shorter supply of truly good listeners, then maybe there's a quantity demanded for more good, excellent coaches. So you're telling me I have a chance. Yeah.
If you do say yourself, well, the three of us would all cheer at that.
I think
it's remarkable how that kind of quiet curiosity, you've both seen it over and over again, has the person, as they share themselves, start to see and feel things about themselves and their situation that they weren't conscious of. Just by having this unfettered moment of being received, their own self-awareness goes up. So I think you're right, Matt. And that's another example of the quiet thing. People may not notice what they're paying you for.
Yeah, right.
When you're sitting across from a leader and you're trying to get their attention around this, what do you do to help them see what you just described?
Well, my starting place, Dave, is always what's important to them. You know, I don't try to enroll people in what's important to me. It's my job to see if I can find the intersection between what I believe is important about leadership and what's currently important to that human being. So if I don't find out what's currently important to them, I've got nothing to aim for. So you know this. I'm going to quit saying this to the rest of this. David and I have known each other a long time, but we say that people are always revealing themselves in three ways: their purposes, their concerns, and their circumstances. So we have questions about that. So if I'm talking to somebody, there's some topic that got us to the moment. And so I'm going to say, Matt, could you tell me what's really important to you about, and then name the thing that they say they're engaged in or they're concerned about or they care for. And that question, for you, what's important, it tends to reveal purpose. And you can say, and what about that remains important to you? Or what about that is really essential? People start to say the things they're for, which is to me the indication of purpose. Concerns tend to be the things they're against, the things they're worried about, the things they wish weren't happening. And then circumstances, that's the factual conditions in which they're residing. And so I start out just asking what's important to you. And are there any concerns you've got relative to that? And can you tell me a little about the situation you're in, which you're trying to address that? So for me, the first thing is just appreciating what they're in, what they're caring for, and what they're challenged by. So Dave, if I've got that, it's actually pretty easy because I am absolutely certain that there is no challenge a leader has in the world that is not served by the quality of human connection. So I just got to delve into that and find out who are they connecting with and where's that frustrating and where it's working. And then I can be of counsel because I can talk to them about how you engage with that person so trust goes up, disclosure goes up, being withheld and cautious goes down. There's all sorts of principles and techniques we've learned over the last however many decades Matt's accusing me of. Yeah. Somewhere between 3 and 5, somewhere in there. Right.
Hey, Mickey, one of the things I have heard on from some of the podcasts you've been on before, and I'm just kind of curious if you don't mind just commenting. Okay, so if leadership, or I would say, I'm going to describe it as the shiny object in coaching right now, which is AI, right?
Yeah.
What do you think some of our listeners, whether they're leaders or whether they're coaches, what do you think they need to start doing and stop doing in order to stay relevant? Because this is the question that we regularly, how do you stay relevant as a coach in the world of, this fast-paced movement of AI? I'm really curious on this, and really on the human side, especially, where they are worried they're going to get lost, or they're worried their certification or their skills are not going to, they're going to be eclipsed by what a bot could do. How would you comment on that?
Well, I'm going to say what arises, Matt, and let's keep at this to get to something beneficial. The first thing is that inside of Conversant, inside of our practice, we say for any leader, the conversations are the work. In this AI environment, where some of the things we used to engage in personally are happening without personal engagement, it's actually making the moments of human to human connection more important. They may decline in number. They will ascend in importance. So your conscious capability in the conversations you have is really important. Using AI to prepare for those conversations can be really powerful and useful. However, one of the things you need to learn is, how do I design AI's engagement with me? To go back to the quality of questions, you've got to really be able to think through, how do I give a precise enough inquiry to give information that's going to help me in the next conversation that I'm in? So studying how I get that artificial intelligence to give me what I need to give what I want to give, I think it's still a conversational challenge. It's just I'm in conversation with this artifice. The idea that it's going to cost us a lot of jobs is valid, and there are many that I think are more vulnerable than others. However, most of the people that we work with are, I would say, middle management to board. so middle management to senior executives to C-level to board. In any of those arenas, your power to connect with people so you can produce better results with less time, money, and stress, AI will not have that capacity expire. In fact, now that you may have fewer moments of engagement, which is also true just in the hybrid work environment and the way we've got people distributed all over the world and being managed from countries where you don't see them in person very often. Those precious moments, are you truly connected to the purposes, concerns, and circumstances of people? Are you curious and compassionate about that in a way that they give up their own barriers and worries and surrender to being in an open discourse? Are you actually a source of value so they leave grateful? I think AI is causing each of those interactions, Matt, to be more precious, not less. You know that old story about the guy who was called in because this hugely expensive piece of equipment wasn't working, and all the internal engineers who were experts on that equipment in the company couldn't solve the problem, and the downtime was costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour. It was this terrible thing. And so this guy who was famously related to the invention of this, they hired him and brought him in. He said, "I'll come and look at this for a minimum of $100,000. And they said, "Okay, if you can fix that, it's costing us that almost every minute." Okay, great. So he goes in there. He spends about 10 minutes studying it. He went and asked somebody for a hammer. They gave him a hammer. He walked out with a piece of equipment and he whacked it in this precise spot, and the whole thing started working again and it went off. So he'd been there about 15 minutes and he presented his bill. The guy said, "You got to be out of your mind. Why should we pay you over $100,000 for 15 minutes? He said, "You didn't pay me for my time. You paid me for knowing where to hit the thing." Well, our power as leaders could be in the moment. What you're being paid for is your ability to connect in a way that those relationships become a source of intelligence. Another one of our principles is differences plus trust equal brilliance. How do you turn differences into intelligence rather than argument? So in this AI area, each of the human moments can be informed by that if we're intelligent about the kind of questions and guidance we give artificial intelligence. But the real field of play is the human-to-human interaction, and that's not going away.
Yeah. And if I were somebody that were looking at the future, I would say as a mentor of coaches that I would invest in the human-to-human, like really getting to know people, to be able to hit the machine where it needs to be hit at the precise moment.
That's right. Now, one of the things that we think is a really crucial, we work a lot with leaders on this, a crucial capability for executives is timing. And one of our favorite questions is, what is it time for now? And what I want and what it's time for often deviate from one another. So being able to stay consciously connected to the environment in which you see what it's time for now, huge asset to leadership.
Well, no question turning. What do you want in a coach for yourself, Mickey?
It's interesting. This is going to sound redundant. I want somebody who cares about my purposes, concerns, and circumstances. I want somebody who's patient enough to know what they're speaking into. Back in the restaurant business, I remember a day we had a cook I really liked named Willie Caldwell. And Willie was really annoyed because he came in the morning and the soup that he'd made the night before did not taste the way he designed that soup to taste. And so he invited people to come in who were there in the night before, and he said, "I want to know who did what to this soup." he said, I found out later he already knew, he could tell because he could taste the brine taste in it. And what happened is somebody saw the soup, and Willie's famous for his soups, and they wanted to start serving it that night as a special instead of wait till the next day. They tasted it and thought it was not salty enough, so they kept adding salt. What Willie told them is that's full of root vegetables, and root vegetables absorb salt immediately. And then after a period of time, will release it. So he said, you invested in a briny concoction we cannot sell. Mm. So if you don't know what's in the soup, don't add something to it. So I want a coach who wants to know what's in the soup before they try to add something to it.
Mm. That's great.
Well said.
What about some resources? So maybe you can share a little bit about, you recently wrote a book, right? That wasn't that long ago, or was it?
Well, the first book was 25 years ago, and the last one was 10 years ago. So it's been a while.
All right. What would you write today? What do you think people need to hear?
Ooh, that's a great question, Matt. I think I'm going to allude to something from somebody else who is writing something I respect. So somebody I've come to know pretty well and who I really admire. Do either of you know Marcus Buckingham? So Marcus is a friend, and I had the good fortune to do some work with him about 6 years ago, and I really got to know him as a data scientist. He's really seriously a scientist, but it's led him to, it's like what you said, Matt, about humans mattering more, not less. And he's written a series of bestsellers, First Break All the Rules and Start with Strengths. And then he founded Strengths Finder. And, the guy's been incredibly successful and all over Harvard Business Review. And so he's very well respected. His last bestseller is called Love Plus Work. Because what the data led him to is that there is a completely provable correlation between the retention of great customers and the attraction and retention of great colleagues, and the times that they say, I love that. If they don't have some I love that moments, you're in trouble. And so he's saying it's not that everything has to be like that, but if we don't have in the core of what we do, I mean, for the two of you as masterful coaches, you still have moments that are not that fun. But you wouldn't keep doing it all these years if you didn't have some I love that moments that came, if not routinely, at least frequently enough to keep you remembering how come you gave yourself to this profession. So the reason that Marcus and I are working together right now, we're about to do something major with a client, because he and I both see the correlation between what we do on the quality of connection and people's experience of I love that. Because I am completely bought into his research. And I know that people feeling heard in an unusual way, that if you listen to learn from them, they also feel like they are valuable. They gave something. And when people feel like you're taking a gift they're trying to give, that's an I love that moment. So I haven't said this to Marcus yet. So Marcus, if you listen to this, I'm saying this without permission. I'm hopeful that what we do together in the next year is going to then give the next thing that I want to write that's like a companion to his research. He's releasing his next book in April, and it's going to be called Design Love In. Because he's saying from the first book, people get all these insights, but they're not running their companies any differently. So how do we design these moments of connection into the way we work? That, Matt, feels like what's up for me now. How do you design that quality of connection in to our most crucial practices and processes and routines? So I'm not more focused than that. It's just the area of my current inquiry is how does our work on human connection contribute to Marcus's findings about I love that as the harbinger of great productivity and fulfillment.
Maybe next you'll say, I love you, not just I love that. As,
Well, I like he's very
yeah.
practical about this.
Yeah.
What I think you're right. It goes in
Yeah.
that order that people would love the moment that they're in, and then they see who they're with, and then they notice, wow, when I'm with that one, it happens a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think of Anderson and Adams. I know they've said it many times in that book, Mastering Leadership or Scaling Leadership, that leadership really was about love. And just, of course, you need to be really careful in the audiences that you say that in. People are like, what in the world? But I do think there is a component there as I do it. I think it's a next level caring for that person I'm sitting across.
Do y'all both know Disrupt HR?
Yes.
Because Robin Anselmi, again, the CEO of Conversant, a few years ago, she was the presentation of the year. You know, they do that thing about these 5-minute presentations, and hers was the presentation of the year in the U.S. 5 minutes. As Dave knows, Robin's an engineer by training. She started out as a ceramics engineer. This is a very savvy, practical human being with huge design sensitivity. And her 5 minutes was about love in the workplace. And it's brilliant. 5 minutes, an engineer talking about love to a room full of HR professionals. It was really, really good. And I do think her practical approach to it, it's like Mark is saying, well, let's start with, can you produce an I love that moment?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
And then let that emerge. Can I actually say, I love you? Because people confuse that with romance.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's definitely more phileo than eros. If I were to put the Greek on it. Mickey, now this is just an opportunity for just Dave and I just to reflect what we heard. Dave, I'm going to let you go first. I have sort of several, but go ahead.
My reflection is in your presence, Mickey. I always feel more curious, and I really appreciate like everything that I've learned. And that question that you posed kind of has ruled my life for the last few decades, which is, what is it time for now? And it's really set me on a path to do things that were more valuable to myself. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
And I think my reflection is, and this is the time of year, at least when we recorded it, just fresh into the new year. But you've inspired me to just think about the whole idea around investing even more in deep connection with other people. And I'm not motivated by a dollar number necessarily or a portfolio, but I am truly motivated by the individual relationships. I get more from that and than anything. And and if it's in short supply, I can bring more. And I think if that's what I want to bring to my customers and to my family, like learning really to deeply listen. And maybe even strengthening my listening skills even some more, so that they can be life-changing listening, if you were. So,
well, it is honorable to be with you both because you're highly capable, highly experienced, and not a shred complacent. That's inspiring to me. That you are, as Eric Hoffer said, perpetually capable of learning and growth.
Mickey, what's the best way for people to either get a hold of you or to get a hold of Conversant? What's the best way that we can do that?
Well, an easy way to nose around and see who we are without having to talk to us would be to go to conversant.com. There's a lot there about us and what we do, and some materials and resources, etc. Also, our podcast, which is called On Connection, is a place for people to go. And then through that, there's access to our latest video program, which is actually, David, it's an update of that 10 Laws of High Performance Collaboration.
Very cool.
And it's in a video with Robin and me and Emma Rose doing that. So those are all available. If you're interested, you could go onto YouTube and just search Emma Rose Connolly, and one of the things that will come up is the TED Talk that Emma Rose and I did together, which I think some people might enjoy. So those are all ways. Thanks for the question. It's a pleasure to be with you both. Thanks.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Big thanks to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting. If you're ready to unlock your leadership potential and make the impact you're meant to make, visit charactermatterscoaching.com and connect with Matt about transforming your team or organization. If this conversation sparks something for you, share it with a fellow leader who needs to hear it. And don't forget, all of today's resources are waiting for you in the show notes. Until next time, keep discovering your secret sauce.